Welcome to the Podcast Marketing Magic live training webinar. I am your host, Seth Training Session. I am your host, Seth Green. We are going to go ahead and get started in just about 2 minutes. Welcome to the Podcast Marketing Magic live training session. I'm your host, Seth Green. We are going to go ahead and get started. All right, so you're about to discover how to stop being the best kept secret in your niche. You know, if you are good at what you do and you love what you do and you believe it has a positive impact on the people that you serve, then obviously you want to get that message out. But it can be kind of frustrating, right? If you know you're good at what you do, but not enough people know that you're good at what you do. So your goal today is to stop being the best kept secret in your niche. And let me ask, what if for example, top thought leaders in your industry took your call? What if they endorsed you? What if they sent out emails? What if they sent out emails and social media posts on your behalf? What would that do for your reputation? What would that do for your status? And what would that do for your bottom line? Make sure you stay till the end, and I will show you how for free you can get on my top rated podcast and be interviewed right next to Dan Kennedy, Roland Frazier, Joel Comm, some absolutely amazing thought leaders that you will have the chance to be on the mic next to. What I'd like is let's make sure that you have no distractions. So I know it's tempting to have your email open and your phone and Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and all that other stuff, but I'm going to ask you put your phone on vibrate, turn email. I have closed my email. I have closed every other window except this one so that I can give you my undivided attention, and I hope you will do the same as well so you can get the most out of this. Who am I? Why should you listen to me? Well, I have written 6 best-selling books, including Financial Advisor Marketing Magic, Real Estate Marketing Magic, Cutting Edge Marketing Magic, Online Marketing Magic, The Facebook Ninja, and my newest book, Podcast Marketing Magic, that you should have downloaded a copy of. I'm also the only person in history who's ever been nominated by legendary marketing guru Dan Kennedy 3 years in a row for his prestigious Marketer of the Year award. And I've been featured on real media like CBS Money Watch, CNN, NBC, Wall Street Journal, LA Times, Boston Globe, Miami Herald, just to name a few. But didn't start out that way. You see, I went to Syracuse University for undergrad. I was an Orangeman. And my life goal at the age of 18, I went to Syracuse University for acting. See, my life goal at the age of 18 was I was going to be a Broadway star. And you see how that turned out. And I'm going to tell you why, because it's directly relevant to what we're talking about today. My senior year, 2 of my friends and I decided we were going to produce an interactive murder mystery musical called The Mystery of Edwin Drood by Charles Dickens that you've probably never heard of. And there's a good reason for that we're going to get to in a minute. We formed a student organization. We went to the student government. We got funding for the musical, and we were all set. Everything was good, and I was a producer. Except 6 weeks before opening night, I got a phone call from the student government saying we need to talk. And Scott, if you've ever gotten a we need to talk phone call, you know it's never good news. Your girlfriend, she says we need to talk. It's because she wants to be friends. And I don't know about you, but I never wanted to be friends. It's never good news from your wife. It's, well, that's not true. It could be we need to talk, I'm pregnant. Hoping you want her to be pregnant. Then it's good news. But your boss is, we need to talk. It's not, we need to talk. Congratulations, you're getting a raise. So anyway, the meeting, it turned out to be the student government said, we made a mistake. Our bylaws prohibit us from giving a first-year organization so much money. We need half your budget back. I said, you can't have it back. We're 6 weeks from opening night. And they said, oh, you don't understand. We're not asking you. We're telling you. We already impounded the funds from your bank account, from your student bank account. We just wanted you to know so that you didn't, if you checked your balance tomorrow, you didn't feel like you got robbed. I said, I feel like I got robbed right now. So my friends and I went back to my apartment to try and figure out what we're going to do. And if you've ever seen the movie Tom Cruise, ever seen the movie Top Gun with Tom Cruise, you remember this guy, the Admiral, who told Tom Cruise, son, your ego is writing checks your body can't cash. And we couldn't produce the show on half the budget. There was no way. And my ego, I didn't want to close the show and disappoint, all the people who were in it. So I said, guys, I got this great idea. I have all these prepaid credit cards. I mean, not prepaid, I mean, pre-approved credit card applications on my dining room table. Why don't I fill them out and get the credit cards, and we'll charge the budget for the show. And they said, that's great, but how are you going to pay it back? I said, we'll sell tickets. And they said, okay. And what if we don't sell enough tickets? I said, no problem. We'll just split the debt 3 ways when we graduate. And so that's what we did. Until, show opened, and I knew nothing about marketing, so we didn't sell too many tickets. That's problem number 1. Problem number 2 is no one had ever heard of the show, which is why it was so cheap to get the rights to it, because it wasn't very popular. So we didn't sell too many tickets. And at the end of school, I said, okay, guys, you got to split this with me. And they went to their parents and asked for permission to do this. And their parents, of course, said no, and which left me holding the bag for the whole thing, which I couldn't pay. And I got stuck going bankrupt. I went Chapter 7. And I thought it was the worst day of worst day of my life, sitting there in bankruptcy court and having the trustee look down his bifocals at me and say, I don't understand. This says it's for a musical. Please explain this to me. So that was pretty rough. So I figured maybe I shouldn't be a producer. Maybe I shouldn't be an actor. I had just borrowed a bunch of money to gamble on something I knew nothing about, and I had lost. So maybe I should go become a financial advisor. That's a logical career choice, right? And so I went to work for A.G. Edwards, and my branch manager tells me, when you get back from trading, here is a book where all of your clients are going to come from your entire career. And I said, great, this is great. I'm going to buy a Ferrari. I'm going to be rich. This is going to be amazing. And he reached behind his desk and he literally pulled out the phone book. He dropped the white pages on the table, on the desk, and said, they're all in there, kid. Go get them. And so I made 300 cold calls a day, every day, interrupting strangers, asking for money because I didn't know any better. And I was banging my head against the wall. Not very much fun if you've ever done it. And so I had the good fortune in my spare time to be a professional magician. I was reading a magazine for magicians. There was a full-page ad in it for a marketing course. I didn't have any money, so I got my parents to buy it for me for my birthday. I took the marketing course, I implemented it, and within 30 days, I became the busiest, most expensive magician in Buffalo, where I live. And I contacted the guy who sold me the course. And I said, would this work in my real job as a financial planner? He said, yes. I said, where'd you learn it? He said, the 2 words that changed my life. He said, Dan Kennedy. So I started buying Dan Kennedy books, started buying Dan Kennedy products, started going to Dan Kennedy events, until I got to the point where I was ready to sit down with Dan and talk to him personally. And Dan says, write me a really big check and I'll change your life. You're doing everything wrong. So I go home. I'm married at this point, been married about a year. And I said, honey, I know a year ago we got married. 9 months ago, we bought our first house. 3 months ago, we had our first baby. 3 weeks ago, you quit your job to be a stay-at-home mom, leaving me, sole breadwinner, making cold calls. I need to go borrow a whole bunch of money to go hire this guy, Dan. She says, no. And I asked her the next day and the next day and the next day until day 31 of me asking, when she said, you better pray this works. And lo and behold, it did. Dan quadrupled my revenue in the first 2 years of working with him and took me from the very bottom of A.G. Edwards. I was the 6,699th rep out of 6,700 to the top 30 nationwide for opening new accounts. So it worked. And I said, Dan, what do I do now? This is great. He said, you open a marketing firm and you do this for other people. So that's what we're here to talk about tonight, how you can do what I did and how what we're doing for our clients will work for you. So why podcasting? I don't want to assume that you know what a podcast is, and hopefully you printed out your action guide and you've got it next to you and you're taking notes and filling it out, and this is where you would want to start. Podcasting is like a radio show on your phone. A radio show on your phone. I happen to have now a top-rated podcast called Direct Response Marketing, which again, if you stay till the end, I'll show you how you can possibly get on it for free. But I'd love it if you went to ultimatemarketingmagician.com/podcasts and listen to some of our episodes and subscribe to the show on iTunes. Why do you want a podcast now? Well, there are 1 billion people listening to podcasts right now. And by the year 2020, that number will triple to 3 billion people. And this is in your action. Fill out this out in your action guide. The reason it's going to triple is because of what you're seeing on your screen right now. It's called Apple's CarPlay. And what they've done is Apple has signed a deal with most major car manufacturers so that your next new car, this is what your dashboard is going to look like. You will see that that center app, that purple app, is the Apple Podcast interface. You will notice there is not a AM/FM radio app. Apple is trying to get rid of terrestrial radio. So 3 billion people will be hearing you either on their smartphones or in their cars. So even if you don't have an iPad, or iMac, you're going to have an iCar. That's why there'll be 3 billion people. And if they're listening, you want them to be able to find you. That's why the time is now. That's why this is the new ground floor of podcasting. So let's debunk a few myths about how to stop being the best kept secret in your niche and how to get, for example, the thought leaders, gurus, experts in your industry to endorse you. And most people, I hear this all the time. Oh, that'd be great. That's great for you. It's not going to work for me because I don't have all the money to go to their events and hire them and be in their mastermind group and all that stuff. The good news is you don't have to do any of that. Most thought leaders are constantly looking for more exposure, and adding value by having them on your podcast is the fastest way to get in the door and build a relationship with them. This is, I'm sorry, it's a fuzzy picture, but if you go to ultimatemarketingmagician.com/podcasts, you will see some of the episodes that we've done. This is Russell Brunson. This is Roland Frazier of Digital Marketer. This is Perry Marshall of, wow, he's written so much. I mean, he's the guru of Google AdWords. He also wrote 80/20 Sales and Marketing. He's Sally Hogshead, New York Times bestselling author of Fascinate. Ivan Meisner, the founder of BNI. Larry Benet, the world's most connected guy. And I've gotten to interview all of them on my show. I'm not in Russell Brunson's mastermind group. I'm not in Roland Frazier's $25,000 boardroom mastermind. I'm not in Perry Marshall's bobsled run. I'm not in saying I'm not. So, I mean, I got in front of all of these people and got to interview them because of what I'm about to show you. A lot of people think if they're doing a podcast that it matters how many listeners they have. They can't approach anybody. They got to do a whole bunch of little guests first and build their way up and slowly get an audience base. And then maybe someday they'll have a big audience. They can ask the big people. It doesn't matter how many listeners you have. It's so early on in the podcasting movement that nobody knows to care about this yet. Now, granted, there are people who do. Like if you go ask a famous podcaster like John Lee Dumas, who's going to do my show in June, most likely they might ask, how many listeners do you have? But in a quote unquote regular business, most people don't know and don't care yet. So take advantage of it while you can. This is one of our clients, Gary Okino. His podcast is called The Outdoor Boardroom. And on it, he interviews large company CEOs who play golf, and they talk about business and life lessons they've learned on the golf course. Well, when Gary started his show, he had 10 listeners. One was him, one was his wife, the other 8 worked for me. So he had 10 listeners. So if that first CEO had said, how many listeners do you have? Gary might have had a challenge, but they didn't ask. And nobody to this day has asked. I've done over 100 episodes. I think I might be on like episode like 120, 130. And I've probably had 2 or 3 people ask how many listeners I have. People just aren't asking at this point. So you want to take advantage of it. Another myth that happens a lot, that I hear a lot, is, oh, those people, those bigwigs in my industry that could do wonders for my career, they won't promote me unless I have a big list. Now, when it comes to an email marketing campaign, that's usually true. So for example, if I said, hey, Roland Frasier, I want you to email the entire digital marketer list for me, I'd have to be able to reciprocate with a list of significant, close to, equal, or greater size for him to do it. But not when it comes to podcasting, because think about this. If Roland's interviewed on my show, he wants to show off that he was interviewed on my show. So he social media posts, he emails out to everybody saying, hey, I was on Seth Green's show. Here's the link to go listen to it. And everybody gets driven back to me. Now, Roland doesn't have his own show, so I can't reciprocate by going on his show and then promoting that I was on it. But what I can do is promote it to our audience and our social media that, hey, I got Roland Frasier on my show. And that obviously makes me look good because I borrow some of his cachet, some of his celebrity in the industry by having him on my show. I'm now the guy who got Roland Frasier. It's funny, if you've read Podcast Marketing Magic yet, there's a chapter where I interviewed a guy who got Gary Vaynerchuk on his show. And it's a fascinating story. So I would highly suggest you check that out. Check out that chapter. Well, you should check them all out. But how he does it, he exactly followed the process, that we lay out in terms of how you get someone like that to say, yes, I'll do your show. And the funny thing is, that guy didn't have a big audience. And Gary knows to ask that question, but he still got him on the show. Here is another example. So Ivan Misner, as you saw, is the founder of BNI, the world's largest referral networking organization. Ivan has his own, the official BNI podcast. He's done about 450 episodes. Yet, and every single one of those has his name on it and has traffic to it. Yet, if you search Ivan Misner in iTunes, my interview of him comes up higher than his entire show. And my podcast comes up number 2 for Ivan, even though I've only had one interview of him on my show. And I'm going to show you some of how we did that. This is an example. If, let's say, you are in a local business, this works for that too. This is John Cito. He is a financial planner who works with divorcing women, and he wanted referrals from divorce attorneys. And he tried buying lunch, he tried sending flowers, he tried sending mail, all with no luck. But when he interviewed them for his show and his book, all of a sudden now they'll talk to him. Let's see how that does. Let's see how it works. Are you ready? If you take away one thing, and again, fill this out in your action guide, iTunes is not a social network. iTunes is a media platform. It's a media platform. And once you have an account on a media platform, such as a podcast, you are now a reporter. That makes you a reporter. And what do reporters do? They interview people. And they have the ability, which you will have too, to grant people what they want more than money and sex. Do you want to know what Mary Kay says people want more than money and sex? Recognition and fame. If I had my financial planning business to do over again, if I had instead of cold calling and asking people for money, even if I was still making phone calls, I wouldn't cold call consumers. I would call attorneys and accountants, and I would interview them on a financial podcast, turn that into a book, and have them hand out copies to their clients because they're in the book, thus driving all of those clients back to me. So that's one way to make this work for you in a regular geographic local business. I mentioned my wife earlier. This is my wonderful wife, Rebecca, and our 3 kids, Ella, Lily, and Max, from left to right. And the other reason why I do what I do, other than loving to get results and success stories from folks like you, is these are some of the 750 third world entrepreneurs I've helped make micro loans to start their business or grow their business to get out of poverty through Kiva.org. So we donate a percentage of our profits to Kiva. I don't get paid for saying that. I'm not an affiliate of Kiva. I'm not telling you to do Kiva, just telling you that's one of the things I'm juiced about. So what are these steps to a successful podcast? Number 1, you need a concept and you need a name. You saw some examples earlier. You need interview questions because you're a reporter, and those interview questions need to be psychologically structured in a proven way to get your guest to do the best job on the interview, get them most excited about the interview, and most excited to promote the interview. And then obviously you need to book your first guests. I mentioned I would show you some secrets of how you can get your podcast to rank higher in iTunes. I'm going to show you those right now. For example, if you go to iTunes and search personal branding, the #1 rated podcast is Life is a Marathon. But that's not really the name of the podcast. See, if you look, the name of the podcast is Life is a Marathon, Life Coaching, Self-Esteem, Personal Development, Personal Branding, Positive Thinking. And the author's name isn't Bruce Van Horn, it's Bruce Van Horn, life coach, motivational speaker, thought leader, author, blogger, runner. Why would he do all of that? Well, iTunes gives you all those characters. It's all that real estate. You might as well use it. So he's stuffing it with his keywords so that he ranks higher for those keywords in his podcast. So sneaky little tip. Make sure your title and your author name have more than just your name and the name of the show. Then you need an introduction, because I said earlier that a podcast is like a radio show on your phone. And radio shows have intros, professionally produced intros with voiceover and music by an artist. Like, it's not, Rush Limbaugh doesn't do his own introduction. So you need a voiceover artist and you need an introduction with music. And it needs to be scripted in this format. It should be a lead generation ad for the show. So it should tell them why they should listen to it, because it's the first thing they're going to hear. It should position you as the expert in your niche, and then tell them what the next action you want them to take is. Is it to go to the website, your website, follow you on Facebook, follow you on Twitter, go get access to a free PDF report or free video series? What do you want them to do so that they know, even if they don't listen to the whole show? Does that make sense? Then you've got to record your interview. How do you do that? If you're doing it, you can do it via Skype. You can via GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar, Google Hangout, like this. Or if you want to do it in person, if you're local, you could use a regular memo voice recorder from Office Depot for $20. Or if you're doing it over the phone, you could get the Call Recorder app, which is free. You just pay for airtime. It's just, you just pay for the minutes that you use. And then you record the interview and get an intro. I'll show you how to use the Call Recorder app. It's really easy. You go in the App Store, you type in Call Recorder. This is what it looks like. Once you download it, this is what happens. You have to buy credits. That's the minutes. And then you hit the red button. It dials in. You hit the contact button to add the person you're calling. And then you hit merge call and you are recording. And then when you're done, you just hang up and it says, you have a new recording available. What would you like us to do with it? And you say, email it to Seth and his team and they'll take care of it for me. Or you email it to yourself. You need cover art. Cover art affects how you rank in iTunes. So I'll give you some examples of good cover art. This is the LinkedIn for Business podcast that we produced with Ted Prodromou, America's leading LinkedIn coach. So you will see I've got the title of the podcast. I've got a mic, so you know it's an audio podcast. I've got a little blurb about him. I've got a picture of him. I've got his website, and I've got a nice professional looking background. This is Dr. Rick Jikomes from the Denture Success Podcast. He's got the title, the mic, his picture, who he is, and then some teeth, obviously, because it's about dentures in dentistry. So you need a professionally produced introduction. We talked about that. Then you need a place to host your podcast to get it to iTunes. There are many, many places that will host for you. The one we like is Libsyn. Again, I'm not an affiliate. I don't get paid. Libsyn is relatively easy to use. The instructions are in the book that you downloaded, where you can follow along, upload the podcast to Libsyn, and then follow the directions, and Libsyn will tell iTunes every time you post an episode. And then you wash, rinse, and repeat. The way you turn it into a book is you get each episode transcribed and you edit it. And then after you're done editing, you send it to your guest for approval in case they want to make any changes. And you also need chapters about you. You need an introduction. You need a conclusion. You need a foreword by somebody else. Could be me. Could be somebody in the show. Could be some industry thought leader in your industry. And that's your book. So what do you get with Podcast Marketing Magic if we do it for you? We'll create the podcast. We'll create the professional introduction. We'll find the guests for you. We'll write the interview questions. We'll edit the audio, and we'll upload to iTunes, all done for you. This is if you want some help. We will then transcribe and edit every episode. We will do the graphic design, layout, and publishing of your book. We will market and promote the book. And then we'll provide marketing materials to send out to your guests for them to send out in their voice to their clients and patients, driving those people back to you. All driving, we hope, a ton of business in your way, all done for you. Now, our secret sauce is the multi-step, multimedia, direct response marketing campaign that gets impossible to reach decision makers to participate in your show and in your book. We also have a direct mail campaign, as I mentioned, that goes from the guests to the clients to get to promote your book and your show, to get all those people exposed to you, dramatically increasing your reach, your email list, your social media following, your podcast listeners, and hopefully your business. What does all of that cost? Well, if you hire Dan Kennedy to write a direct response, direct marketing campaign for you, it's $100,000 plus royalties in perpetuity. Don't worry, you're not gonna pay that. And you're not even gonna pay $24,000, which is what a lot of places charge. I just hope that we inspire you to be our next success. So whether that's you doing it on your own or us doing it for you, either way, let me know what how you're doing. Because I mean, think about it. If it was $24,000, if all this did for you was get you in front of your dream referral sources and prospects, would it be worth it? If all it did was get your book done without you having to write it yourself, would it be worth it? If all it did was, I mean, if you go to Tucker Max will charge you 20 grand just for the book, not counting anything else. And that's them interviewing you and turning the book around and making a book out of it. But then the book is all about you. And the only person who's going to promote a book that's all about you is you. No one else will care. Our secret sauce is way less money and works way better because you got an army of people in the book that are promoting it for you. And if all this does is get you new customers, clients, or patients, is it worth it? So normally we charge $19.97 per month for 4 months, and that gets you a podcast and a book. And then if you keep going after 4 months, in 12 months, you'll have a ton of new business, and I'll show you why in a second. But you'll notice the $19.97 a month is crossed off because this is a new version of this webinar, this training session that we are testing. I'm doing a special promotion where just for the folks who have watched this training session, it is not, and there will be a gift that. If you stick with us after, you can keep going. Then we do a book launch where everybody on the show comes, spouses brings guests. We do try and get the local event. And then monthly mastermind, both physical or virtual. So gets talks about on with them. We've had clients who said throw in a month free of virtual employee who you can use to help you do what you want. Edge marketing working for our clients program that physically, but we video it because you're not going to fly to Buffalo unless you're already here every month. So we video it, and the video access is normally $2,364. I will give you a year's free of that as a bonus. So again, we'll create the podcast for you, produce the professional introduction, find guests, rate your interview questions, edit the audio, upload to iTunes, transcribe and edit every episode. Out in publishing of the book, Mark, we execute our on Amazon and Kindle to get the book to rank higher and get more people to see it there. The mark to the folks in the book, send out to their clients, patients, and list. Right, all done for you. If you want special offer, podcast marketingmagic.com. You. And mentioned I would show you how. And Scott, I'll answer your question coming in. I will get to those in a second. So it's on my show and get your bit of exposure, and go to ultimatemarketing.com/podcast, and you can fill out a form, and we'll have a conversation right for our show. I'm going to take a quick, I'm throwing a ton of information out, and then I will answer. Okay. I recommend the aspect of the intro. You're trying to set up useful content. So we have some clients who do a teaser ahead of. They talk about what you're going to learn on today's episode, and so in the talk, and you'll hear that about rather than interview and what they're going to. So that's sort of how we balance. Okay, I'm sorry. Over as a Google Hangout, no control over Google. I apologize. Okay, other question. Months. Why is it? Because it takes to do the research on who your ideal to them, get them to. So once they start responding, probably an episode every week. It takes between 10, 20 at the absolute most episodes to make. Not depends on. Good question. Okay, I see people typing. Answer their questions. Do I keep doing, if I continue after 4 months, do you keep doing my podcast? Yes, we will keep getting you more guests. We will keep getting you more episodes. And what you'll probably do is end up putting out more books, because you will have every 3 or 4 months, you'll have enough content to create another book, second edition, third edition, or do books on different topics. But that's usually what people do. What happens if I stop? If you stop after 4 months, that's okay too. We part ways. Everything is your intellectual property. So you own the book, you own the podcast, and every episodes. We'll switch it from our hosting account on Libsyn to yours. And what you do with it from there on is up to you. If you want to book your own guests and do your own show, you're more than welcome to. The intro, you own everything. Any other questions? Okay. Awesome. Well, I hope you got a lot out of it. I hope you took good notes. I look forward to hearing your success stories either way. If you're interested in having us do it for you, go to podcastmarketingmagic.com/done for you. And if you're interested in getting on our show, even if you're not a customer, you don't have to be a client. If you want to get on our show, go to ultimatemarketingmagician.com/podcast-guests. Thanks so much. And I hope to see you at podcastmarketingmagic.com/done for you.